Well, very excited to be moderating this panel today, uh, exploring the intersection of NFTs, ownership, the future of gaming, how that will incorporate the NFTs in gaming today, and how we think that should change the future of gaming forever. Quick intro on myself, Sean Guerin, aka GFunk, founder of Pixel Vault. From the outset of our project, we really tried to gamify the collector experience, but we weren't in gaming per se. And I'd say maybe a year and a half ago, it just became so abundantly clear to me that gaming experiences, ownership across games, the value that you accrue in game very much being important as more and more of our lives basically come online. Started to see it in the pandemic, and I think we are irreversibly on that track. So very excited to have a group of 4 amazing creators, some that I have met before, others I have not. So very interested to hear all of your takes on the future of Web3 and gaming. So first, I'll introduce Psych, creative lead at Deadfellaz. Most of you are likely familiar with their IP, very distinctive style. Psych, I'll throw it to you to maybe introduce yourself and give any sort of lead-off commentary to the audience.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you for the intro. Yeah, I'm co-founder of Deadfellaz and currently the director and chief creative officer of the company DFC Labs, which we've grown into. I guess like we're across media, tech, gaming, and a few other bits and bobs. So pretty broad spectrum, as a lot of the PFP projects have grown into actually pretty broad spectrum companies.
Yeah, and I think it very much needs to be that way. So excited to hear all you're doing beyond that distinctive IP you guys have grown. So Thomas, founder of World Wide Web, pixel-based MMORPG that I have been checking out extensively this morning. Thomas, thanks for joining us, and please introduce yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Hey there. So yeah, Thomas Webb. I'm the CEO and founder of World Wide Web. We were one of the first projects to do interoperability with the avatars, and we've evolved into a MMORPG that runs in the browser, pixel-based MMORPG. So we're super passionate about building the next generation of video game using Web3.
Awesome. Looking forward to hearing more about that. And then Josie, OG artist in the AR space, been around for a long time and certainly have gained a lot of notability as CEO of CyberBrokers. So Josie, thanks for joining us, and yeah, please introduce yourself.
Hey, thanks so much. I have been a crypto artist since 2017, ventured into AR, NFTs, VR, all the good things shortly after. And last March of 2022, launched CyberBrokers, which is a fully on-chain collection, and have since launched lots of things under CyberBrokers. One being Pixel Brokers that actually are usable in World Wide Web, and we have a ton of fun there. And then yesterday, fully launched Mechs, which I'm wearing now, and you see some of the crowd, which are fully customizable 3D assets. So lots of things happening in the world.
Amazing. Looking forward to unpacking more of that. So today I have basically a selection of questions for each of you, but I very much encourage everyone on the panel to chime in if you have any specific thoughts on the subject. So we'll start with Psych. So as I mentioned, you've created this very recognizable IP in the NFT space, and looking to hear more about what's next. You said you're delving into a variety of items, gaming included. So first, let's start with how you envision the future of IP in gaming and how that incorporates your NFT strategy.
The future of IP in gaming. So I would say that like the the future of IP in gaming is pretty complex. Like when you look at, I guess, the people that are trying to push interoperability forward, it's something that we've seen across like a lot of different games, like just at a basic level when like you'd get like an unlock for like a skin on a game because you're like buying tons of Doritos, right? So I think that it's going to be like a similar thing, but it's going to be a crossover where like IP is a lot more fluid. Like you'll have kind of like your core brand and then you might have your own platforms, but you will build those out with the intention of like sharing those spaces. So I think the evolution is essentially going to be like the development of IPs that can share space, I would say.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. What level of cooperation do you think that'll require, and how do you see that that all coming together? Do you think that's more of like a near-term goal or long-term? Obviously, we've
Yeah.
seen World Wide Web accomplishing that a bit today.
Yeah, like we've worked with Webb. Like if you've got a Deadfellaz 10K, that's all linked to the core token. Like all of our kind of like I guess like interoperable assets are linked to the core asset versus like a split off like secondary token. So we've been working with tons of different metaverse platforms, like including oncyber, and I think that it's just kind of like a concerted effort around like, I guess, like file types and the nitty gritties and just kind of like a I guess like a group passion to actually see that happen. And I think that a lot of the teams, like even if you don't see it on the surface, like do talk on the regular, and everyone wants to see I guess as little friction as possible. So it is promising like how much collaboration there is, especially within the Web3 space versus like I guess like the traditional gaming space that's quite secretive and kind of like siloed. So I think that yeah, we'll probably hopefully kind of I guess rub off on the more traditional kind of like gaming and I guess like interactive scene and start breaking down some barriers.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've been trying to push. And I agree with you that founders in the space are very interested in working with one another. It's very much a non-zero sum game, especially at this point in time, as we try and grow the space and figure out all of the different use cases for the technology and how we can enhance what it is to be a community member or an appreciator of an IP. So with that, how do you think NFT-based ownership has influenced the design and development process at Deadfellaz? This idea of empowering your community.
So we're very creator focused. Like our tech rollouts, I would say, are going to be very focused on a creator platform that, like, for lack of a better term, like we're calling it DAO right now, but that will scale up into being something like quite significant over the course of, I would say, the next year to 3 years. And then we also have a TCG in development as well that I guess is like a TCG, but it's more of an ecosystem really when you look at the, I guess, like interoperability in the ecosystem that you can build around like the Web3 side of a trading card game and the lore, and I guess those cards being assets that can be interoperable. So that's like our core, I guess, like scaling. And then the IP side and the fleshing out of for the like the individual, I guess, tokens and the IP that's attached. Like we have a similar contract to how Bored Apes work, but it's a little bit different. It's a bit of a hybrid between a traditional IP ownership and like an open use, like linked to your exact token. We essentially just are building out things that are like valuable experiences, right? Like running an IP driven only company is very precarious, like it's very hard to scale. So we essentially are just rolling out tech and experiences, and then we'll use the IP to drive that forward, which in turn will like give those owners of those tokens like access to valuable experiences.
Awesome. Can you maybe drill in a bit more to this this sort of DAO like thing that you mentioned at the outset? How would a creator in your community leverage the DAO?
So we've got multiple partners that are, say, like pooling funds for like different creative endeavors, different like co-branded like experiences. You can have direct connections to different like illustrators or coders or anything like that. We're essentially like, we're working to, I guess, revolutionize like that creator fan connection that we've seen like happen across like so many different collections in so many different like kind of mediums as well. So we're basically trying to bottle that up and then drag that across into Web 2, so that we can kind of like, I guess, like fuck some shit up with the way that creators get treated right now. Everyone's kind of like on quicksand. They don't know when monetization or an algorithm's going to shift, or someone's going to come along and just kind of like take their audience, and you know, they have to shift and they can't bring them with them. So I think there's definitely some things that we can improve in that relationship between a creator and like a consumer or a fan, or however you see that relationship. But that's essentially our goal, and how you will interact with the DAO.
Awesome. Yeah, that's been a big focus for us at Pixelvault as well, trying to find that alignment between company and community. And I think it's really the way that these ecosystems succeed in the long run. But as we mentioned before, relating to interoperability and the potential hurdles there, what other challenges do you see that might face creators in the NFT space as they try to create brands that will ultimately exist across various games and other platforms?
I think that it's only going to get easier, honestly. Like, we've been probably building in one of the most difficult periods of where you're just kind of bootstrapping stuff together. With the, I guess, like scaling of like AI tech and different frameworks, and I guess the work that so many have been putting in from like the last couple of years, like even within this space of like tooling, and even just like the lessons that they've learned over like what works and what doesn't work. I think it's only going to get easier for you to create like an interoperable brand. In terms of like future problems, I would only see kind of like I guess the like facilitation of that process being done by like a large corporation could kind of like get in the way of, I guess, like the more like unique kind of like grassroots brands. It's essentially like you could end up with like a company that's basically like the Canva of creating interoperable assets, right? So it could end up like a bit of a swarm, and it might get hard to get through the noise. But yeah, I think that there'll still always be a place for creatives that make really cool shit.
Mm-hmm. And so, somewhat similar to your last comment, how do you see NFTs shaping collaboration between gaming companies and creators, and what potential dangers do you see in at least the stance today of many of these large gaming companies being anti-blockchain or crypto?
I would say that like a lot of the vitriol will slowly drop away as people just become more educated. I would say like most of the risk is probably as you see the interplay of like permissionless collaboration and things like that, and I guess like the legal system across like just different countries and different sectors. So things like you could technically just kind of tap the tokens of something that like a game releases, and just give them open access because you've like allow listed their contract, right? So but some traditional companies might be like, but like, why are you trying to piggyback off our audience? Like, that's our contract. You're not allowed to allow listed or point to it. So I think that there's going to be like some clashes there. But I very much would like to see something that's like an open permissionless type landscape.
Mm-hmm. And in that sort of spirit, this open permissionless landscape, how do you see community driving and shaping the development of the assets as part of the Deadfellaz IP?
Oh, well, that's definitely like essentially everything. Like everything that we create is because we've had a response that people feel like they're going to have some kind of use case or some kind of like value or enjoyment derived from the assets that are being pushed out. I think that everything, like I feel like the next phase of like this entire space is going to be like just like the UX and experience side of like actually having an endpoint that's fun. Like you just see like a swarm of like games that are actually games, and like I've always seen the metaverse and like interoperable as being kind of like experiences that are interconnected, not necessarily like a bunch of like metaverse platforms. Like kind of jumping into an FPS and then you jump across to an RTS and then you're in a card game and then you're in kind of like these things that are just like a bit more like siloed in terms of experience. I don't think that one platform needs to be any like kind of like 100 things. We can just have all these different groups that do one thing very well and they're interconnected. I'm kind of like tripping over myself. I can't remember what your question was, but there's my answer.
No, I mean, I agree with what you responded. Yeah, the question was just relating to how community sort of inspires the development of Deadfellaz, and you definitely touched on that. We've seen through the last cycle that at least during the NFT boom, much of it was financially speculation driven. So I guess the question is value a key consideration in the first point? And how do you ensure the long-term value and relevance of your assets? You've touched on this briefly, and it's something that I've tried to stress over the last year is that, I think fun needs to be first and foremost, with that speculation just being the icing on the cake. I think you have a similar take, but I'd be interested to hear you unpack how you look at the value of the assets and how value might accrue to the community across games and other experiences as the IP develops.
Yeah, I would say that like value is something like I think it's like why we have the same kind of opinions around like ecosystem tokens and things like that, where it's like you would just see like a drop in value when there isn't like a entertainment value or like some kind of like value outside of just speculation. Like, and community and like events, and there's all sorts of things that are just like, I guess, like engagement and the facilitation of relationships that like has a certain amount of value to it. But at the end of the day, like I feel like a lot of us that are like driving towards having like products and experiences and things like underneath the umbrella of our companies, like we see that need for there to be like actually like a product driver, right? Like some kind of experience that you're responsible for that you can deliver in connection to the token. Because like at the end of the day, like a tokenized kind of token gated experience is linked in the same way that any token is. Like when you see like a ecosystem token launch and it's like a pre-alpha like metaverse platform, right? And then they just don't ever launch for 2 years. Like you just see that token empty out. So I think it's a similar thing where you just need to have some kind of experience that's linked. And that's very much our focus over the next few years of just fleshing out platforms that we can then prop up our audience and our collectors that we've got right now and put them in a position of, I guess, power within that ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a bit this way, but right, it's the attention economy, and largely that means that speculation has been winning overall. But my hope, and it sounds like your hope, is that attention economy will be driven to actual products of value under these IP umbrellas, and building valuable experiences for community to connect with one another. So with that in mind, what advice would you have for brands that are looking to enter the NFT space and the gaming space in particular?
Honestly, I feel like that's one of our superpowers, and you probably see it across like a lot of the groups, like even like the team that you've got around you. Like if you're a brand entering the space, I would say like you just need to pair up with someone. Like doing it yourself at this point is almost just like ignorance to a certain level. Like there's just people here that have seen hundreds of projects come and go. There's like teams that have like literally just been like put through hell and just like stuck in there and come back, and they've seen everything that there is, like on the spectrum of just like rug pulls to like really well-intentioned projects that then just didn't really execute well, and like no one actually even noticed that they existed and things like that. So I would say like if you're a brand, just like find someone that you vibe with. Everyone's so well, like I feel like everyone in this space is really good at kind of like making their intentions known. So like if you're a brand that like really kind of fucks with DeFi and the whole like self-sovereignty side, like just find a brand that you know has those values. Or if someone's like just got like like if someone's really heavy in the metaverse, like see like you've got World Wide Web that do that so well, like why come in and try and do something yourself off the bat? Like talk to the web team and like get your brand integrated with some characters and like build an organic audience there, and then like find your feet as a brand from that point.
Mm-hmm. What would you say to the idea though that a lot of these brands they don't know what they don't know, and so they think that they're working with someone that understands the space? Like go look at LinkedIn, and you're going to find 100,000 Web3 experts when most of them really don't know what they're talking about. I've found that living and breathing through Twitter, even prior to having a project or a following of any kind, by spending the time in the space, I was able to make connections with people that were very relevant and had big followings. But without spending that time in the space, how would a brand really find the right groups to partner with?
It's just like your typical kind of like finding people through where they show up. Like actually just like I've found a few different game studios that I've been chatting with where they've just got like one person that's like their degen, right? That is always in Twitter, is always in Discord, is like across like just every single different kind of like niche social like interaction platform, and like they just know what's up, and that's what you need to do. Like you can't go to LinkedIn and just like find some clown that's never worked on anything but is like somehow an expert. So I would say just like actually meet people where they're at, and then you can't always get it right because that's just the world as it is. Like I used to run an agency, and like 70% of the people that like would send you a portfolio, like there was stolen work in there, and like their jobs weren't actually ones that they'd even worked at. So there's always going to be like, I guess, landmines when you're trying to find professionals in any kind of space. But if you find people that are actively day by day, you can see them delivering for other teams or anything like that, like it's an easier bet that person will know what they're doing.
Yeah, so the TLDR there is make sure you have at least one true degen on your team. I think that's in our work with Adidas, they had a couple degens on their team, and it certainly helped. So make sure you source for that person for sure. So Psych, thank you for all of that insight. At the end, if we still have time, I'd love to sort of open up the panel maybe to questions or you all to sort of ask questions of one another. But with that, let's move on and talk to you, Thomas. So World Wide Web seems to have this very clear mission of creating a platform that brings communities together. As a starter, can you explain how the NFTs come into play and how you integrate these communities within the World Wide Web platform?
Yeah, of course. When we started, we saw that NFT is this amazing innovation where essentially we have access to everyone's game items and avatars, and then we could use that to represent them in our game as people travel around different communities and collect different NFTs and engage in different events. We could show those off in one unified experience, kind of like how we experience social media today. We share our content, we collect the content from different places, but we share it on Instagram or TikTok. And I think it began there, the idea of recreating the tokens that you hold as pixel characters inside our video game. The goal there was to bring all of these communities into one place and create a means for them to be able to interact with one another and engage with one another. And I think from the get-go, our mission was to experiment with how we could take that one step further and create an MMO that uses Web3 technology to solve some of the problems that MMOs have suffered. Botters, farmers, power levelers. There's extensive papers that have been written over the last 10, 15 years addressing why virtual economies are kind of the pinnacle of what economic theory is about, but there are some fundamental issues with them. And I think what we've seen with NFTs and Web3 is this totally new dynamic, this totally new economy. It's not even kind of creator economy, is it? It's something different come to light through the ability for people to be able to freely trade and sell and buy assets from these ecosystems. So I think we're now trying to, we're now exploring how we can go about solving some of those problems of those traditional MMOs and do it using this Web3 technology.
Right. So NFTs in a very real way enhance and solve some of the problems that you've experienced in gaming in the past. What other value do you think that NFTs bring to the experience of a gamer?
I think what's really interesting is the first multiplayer games like Ultima Online, they were massively multiplayer role-playing games, and each player would go out into the world. They'd have a risk they'd have to take. Maybe they've paid or spent time leveling their character to acquire some sort of item, and they have to take a risk in order to try to earn more of that item, and that's the game. And what made that game really fun was that players were having to trade with one another through trading, and that would happen through a common store value, like in-game gold. And obviously everything was locked inside the game, but even still, people would be buying and selling those assets outside of the game. And I think with what we're seeing with NFTs, especially recently, they've kind of turned into like coins. There's been a lot of debate on Twitter about them being coins, but people trade them based on their traits and so on and so forth, and they have this sort of secondary value opposed to what they are, just the art or the utility of it. There's a speculation side of it, and that part of speculation, I think when you look at games, for the multiplayer games, you look at games now have become AAA slot machine style games on the app stores, the highly monetized in-app purchase machines. They don't need Web3. The Web3 doesn't really fit in that model. Web3, when I see it, what it really does is it works for the original model of a multiplayer game where players are trading with one another, and they're trading not just their what they've paid for and the speculation, but they're also trading their skill and their ability to identify something that they think might be valuable or that's hard to obtain. And you can attribute that to kind of like when you'd spend hours going through different projects and researching the founders and trying to understand what you think is a good team. And a lot of people buy NFTs off of that. And then time. And that would be like with our game, when you had to play the game weekend after weekend to get a whitelist spot, we really put our holders through tests to make sure they're really good gamers. I think valuing those three things equally, that's what that original multiplayer game did quite well, but it didn't have the ability for people to be able to freely buy and sell and trade. And I think what Web3 does is it allows that. So I'm going to be intrigued to see what happens with the CS:GO model and Dead Drop and these games that have the skins. I think that's definitely going to be a massive part of it. I'm more excited to see what happens when we have these virtual economies that really do function like real economies, where people are putting a value on time and skill. That's what I'm excited to see.
Yeah, I think for those larger games, they're probably going to need a significant push from their audiences because, as you mentioned, right now they have no incentive if people are going to be spending the money without something that they can take of value outside of the system. But you had mentioned that right now you are very carefully selecting for the audience that comes in and plays for your games. as for the IPs that come into your games, how do you decide which communities integrate within your game? And do you foresee that being something that becomes completely open one day, or as a creator of these ecosystems and experiences, and to your point, economies, do you think it's necessary to continue to gate for which ecosystems may participate?
The conversation about interoperability and access and permissionless and decentralized, I think, is a very interesting one. We can all agree that design by committee is a very complicated approach to building any kind of product, a game, a platform, even an NFT project. So I think in relation to communities and other collections coming into the World Wide Web, we have an extensive integrations process and team and tools to enable for that. I think what's really important to us is, firstly, making sure that the project is sound, that it's not using web to bring web holders into their ecosystem and to rug, and that that those sort of things happen. So it's really important for us that we protect our community and our players. And then also quality. It's really important that the collections come in and they understand that they have to deliver something that looks good in the game. It's not going to look bad, because if it looks bad, it makes everything else look kind of bad. So we have some sort of guidelines on that, and we work with communities and collections very heavily. There's very, very big team that deal with that to help that process. So how I see it moving in the future, I think it will heavily hinge on the future of the NFT space. It's been quite sad over the last year. A lot of projects have rugged or disappeared. Some of them have risen from the ashes. The Pudgies, for example. Like, it's great to see Pixelmon and the Mechaverse, these projects that we thought were going to go down and have ended up the teams delivering really strong roadmaps and vision. So I think it's important for us to just remember that it has been a crazy year, and that we need to make sure that we are promoting the projects that are doing this right.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Let's say the trader economy doesn't always capture the value that is being delivered behind the scenes. So figuring out which communities are of value long term is definitely a complex process for a gated gaming experience. But you'd mentioned sort of a wide variety of challenges you face when incorporating NFTs into World Wide Web. Could you maybe drill into some of those challenges a bit more, and how you see the role of NFTs and MMORPGs evolving in the future, maybe to solve some of these problems?
Well, I think you've brought up a really good point here, which is that, like, you're saying gated experience, and it's like, okay, well, like, everything on chain is on chain, it's final. So one of the issues is that there's never before been a scenario where a game designer has not been able to edit the rules of the game, or has not been able to tweak the balance of the game, or to find a way to fix a problem with a game economy. Examples are, in a game economy, if someone was to hack the game or exploit the game, they very easily could create mass supply of a particular resource or item and destroy the entire game economy. And it would be up to the game designer to balance that by either removing it or banning the player. But in Web3, you don't have that. You can't do that unless you want to kind of play like USDC and have the ability to ban individual tokens. So it's quite complicated. The conversation of decentralization is like, it's a very complicated it's a very complicated system, especially for a game, because there's so many inputs there. Like, it's not just about balancing it and what's fair, it's also about what's fun. And no two gamers will agree, right? Everyone has their own view and opinion of what is a good game. And I think we have to find the right balance between using NFTs and traditional gameplay, game design in order to find. So that, that's been one challenge for sure, is and then farmers and bosses, that's obviously very tough. You look at what Yuga's done, for example, and you've got a gated game there, right? It's kind of like create more, play more to create more and sell to someone else, and the ecosystem gets bigger and wider, opposed to saying, hey, anyone can play. And I think it's interesting when we come from this thesis of free to play is the model that's been dominant for the last 10 years. See that kind of change to now it's like, oh yeah, invest to play, like, which is quite different. So I think there's some interesting challenges there in terms of game design, and I know a lot of the top studios, they're all playing around with Web3, but a lot of people there have got big ideas of how they might be able to implement it, but I don't think many of them are taking the approach of let's go and make a big Web3 MMO game economy, because for the reasons I've said, there are so many ways it could go wrong. So I think for now, like what we've been doing at World Wide Web, we push out updates every couple of months with a new game release. It's kind of crazy because the community even thinks that they're like, this is a new product, and we're like, no, this is another test. This is just us testing stuff. You know, it looks and feels like a product, but it really is just a test, just to try to understand where do things go wrong now, why do they go wrong, and how are we going to achieve making sure it doesn't go wrong when the full thing goes live. So yeah, I think just it's really important for projects to do that, like break things, move fast, don't get stuck in the let's mint stuff and it's final, because it's a very easy way to get stuck in, you know, now we have to adhere to this fixed policy or this fixed design. I think it's good to be very agile and to be able to adapt and grow and make mistakes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you point out this free-to-play gaming model being what has been persistent over the last decade or so, but it's resulted in these dark patterns, right, where players are forced to endure processes in games that are not enjoyable. It's simply for the monetization of the game. And you would think that these NFT-based game economies would help solve for that, and also provide a lot of additional information to game developers. So tapping into your previous thought on, well, how do you truly decentralize a game? I think that would be quite difficult, because, you know, you need to have some balance on the economy, and hopefully not just users selecting for different skills or items. Now you actually see this sort of real world economy emerging, where you can actually see the value of the tokens that exist in the world to help balance and remove certain OP items. But
I mean, yeah,
go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say that requires a lot. It's one thing to have a speculative coin or a speculative token or a speculative NFT, but to create an economy, and we did this, right? We did this in during Halloween. We had this Halloween event where you could farm. I say farm, I'm a gamer, sorry, but yeah, let's be real. You can farm dailies, daily challenges, take down different monsters. We had a few different game modes, a few different bosses in the Roguebusters game we have, which is kind of like bullet heaven style gameplay, or survivor gameplay, right? And you would earn resources like copper ore and iron ore, and you could craft weapons, and then when you get the weapon in the game mode. And we set that thing free, and it was just insane to see, even though it was just in-game items, people were trying to sell them in the Discord, and they were selling them, for crazy amounts of money. Like it's, high values, like, hundreds, thousands of dollars for blueprints, for weapons, for resources. And within about 2 months, farmers came in, and we've got just like thousands of bots trying to get into game and farm these resources. And what I found fascinating was that was like a 1 layer deep, or that's 2 layer deep economy, right? You get blueprints, and they allow someone who owns a piece of an apartment to install it on a crafting table, and then any player can go into the apartment, they pay a bit of money to the landholder, and they bring the resources and they craft a new weapon. So the player just has to go and get the resources and the money, and the landholder benefits. Very, 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 very simple game economy. And that was enough to drive this sort of gameplay and this virtual world economy. And I sat there with the team, and we're just like, it's very much alive. If we had done this on chain, it would have been very dangerous, because people obviously speculate on top of that. So very excited to see what happens in the future. But I think it's incredibly complex, and I really think games should be thinking very long and hard about what they're building to protect for that, because you will get farmers, you will get botters, people will try to hack you. I mean, look at what happened with Axie, right? It's going to happen. We have to build knowing that it's going to happen and prepare for it, which is obviously really important to take care of the player.
Yeah. in my day to day as we've been trying to craft this protocol for gaming that is essentially trying to crack the nut of these economies. I mean, there are so many considerations to take in, as you mentioned, botters and speculators. I mean, do you think, how far away do you think we are from being able to tackle this balance between in-game and real-world economies leveraging NFTs?
Yeah, so this is something we did, right? We and it's Yuga have actually, like, they've echoed this too with what they did with Dookie Dash. We're running things in browsers because we need the freedom from the app stores. We need the freedom to be able to use Web3 and those tools, right? So, but with that means that any hacker can log into the game and see all the game code. And so the real challenge now is, how do you protect yourself from that? So we had to build this system where the whole game is running in the server and everything that's happening is validated, and we build and design the games knowing that there has to be enough skill involved that you can't have a bot, you can't have an aim bot, you can't all of these kind of things. We think about, how do we make this. And it's funny, I've been talking a lot with companies like PokerStars, for example, and trying to learn from the things they do to prevent botters who are playing poker on behalf of players trying to make money. So I think that's we're not far away from that. We're not the only ones that are doing. Dookie Dash did that. They had a very interesting system that, whilst people could hack the visuals of the game, they still had the ability to replay those games and to watch them over to check whether or not they were valid. And we have a similar sort of system for a lot of stuff we do. So I think that's really important. I think there's some sort of interesting ways we can get around things for now, because I don't think Web3 wallet management, even Ethereum itself, any of the L2s has worked out some of the scalability issues that we're facing and the UI UX issues that we're facing. So one solution we have is we actually give items in game, and then we wait once a week, we mint them on chain. So we have this like buffer period to check whether or not anything fishy is going on. And that's a part of the system, the infrastructure we have, one of our approaches. But yeah, that's just a small example. So I think we're not far away. I really don't. I mean, we're feeling really geared up. We're looking to put something out, hopefully later this year, something a bit grander. I think there's a lot of hope. What I really want to see more than anything is working out how we're going to hide the Web3 and make it feel less intrusive of gameplay. We don't want to be signing transactions. One solution we had for this is like our most recent PvP game. We don't even ask you to pay gas or to sign a transaction. We just airdrop it to you dynamically on demand. So when you buy items in vendors, we're just airdropping it to you, and we're paying $3 in gas to go and do it. But we just wanted to show our players and say, hey, look, this is how we think it should feel. But we need to work out how we're going to do this, whether it's going to be on an L2 or, hopefully, well, it's not going to be anytime soon, but we can come up with a clever way to fix it on Ethereum. Those are the kind of things I think need to happen for it to really get there. And a lot of L2s trying to solve that problem.
I think we are very well aligned in a lot of these thoughts on economies. I'll definitely reach out to you after the panel. Thank you for breaking down your thoughts on these economies. I want to make sure we get Josie her time to shine. So tapping into a continuation of our combo with Thomas, Josie, you've been at the cutting edge of many different technologies across Web3, as you mentioned, since 2017, as you started your art. So now, as you apply some of your learnings and these principles to CyberBrokers, let's start, I guess, at the most basic phase. How do you think NFTs enable the creation of this CyberBrokers world that you aim to create and foster user engagement?
Thanks. It's a great question. It's a really big question. And I'll answer at high level, and I'm sure we'll dig into some of it. But in so many ways, obviously, people, we have tools. Just yesterday, we launched our mech assembly builder, and you can see a lot of the mechs in the crowd here, where they can assemble, there's billions of combinations from the different mechs that we release that they can mix and match arms and heads and bodies and legs. They can change the color of them. They can change the way they glow. They can pick their name. They could break their NFT apart and rebuild them. even earlier on with CyberBrokers, it's 100% all on chain with vector files, completely stored on Ethereum, not IPFS, not on any servers. It's directly in the code. So people have been able to play with and create on their vector layers and undress their CyberBrokers, redress their CyberBrokers. We also really decided at the very beginning of creating CyberBrokers that we wanted to allow our users to have the commercial license where there's no cap on how much money you could make from creating brands out of your own NFTs. We've been seeing some really cool, just based off that, user-generated content, which is something I'm super pumped about, like Amari, which is Project or Player Zero's, one of their pop stars who has over, over hundreds of thousands of views on this CyberBrokers music, on her songs. Lost Paradigms, which was a Twitter banner project created from the community. So the question is big, but we've used NFTs and the rights we've given with our NFTs, the tools we've built around our NFTs, to allow people to continue to build off of that, but also take it into our own hands and enhance every single thing that we release.
Yeah, and I don't think that the market necessarily realizes the value in all of those things you listed today. But certainly as the space grows, I think those are incredibly important underpinnings to empower collectors and communities to continue to build. And it seems to me, the more power you give up, the more value is potentially accrued back to sort of the core community that is being built around the IP. So with that in mind, how do you think that your NFTs empower your fans, similar to what you just referenced, to sort of interweave their own narratives into the actual fabric of CyberBrokers?
Yeah, I mean, it's been incredible. With CyberBrokers themselves, also with MEX, which we just launched, and anything within our ecosystem, we have a really permissive license, and we have since the beginning. And it's been this amazing thing where, because we have this permissive license, people have been able to grow their own, their own IP around their characters, but all within the rails that we've built. So we've seen things like people apply for auditions to be written into our main storyline, into our chapters. People create their own spin-off stories and mini comics and books. People wanting to, or starting to animate and create their own 3D assets of their characters as well. So I strongly believe that giving people those rights and is only better for your ecosystem. It allows more eyes on your project. It allows people to make money from their assets, which is really exciting for people. And it gives them something more than just ownership. It gives them this like real connection that they can experience and develop on top of, which has been really powerful for us so far.
Yeah, so we've taken a similar approach, and I love seeing the growth of this community-generated content. You also, though, see a large push towards people adopting CCO. I'd be curious your thoughts on the differences or benefits between having a project with like a highly empowered commercial rights community versus something that would be CCO and just open for use.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, artists, I mean, I've seen a lot of artists from early on use CCO. And to be honest, my opinion has changed on it a lot over the years. At the beginning, if it was something that me personally as an artist, I was never interested in having my works be CCO. And I think as I started to learn and see the power of what that's done for other artists or what that sort of enables, my opinion has changed over the years. For CyberBrokers specifically, I do not think that CCO is a right fit. And that's because we want to build the rails that our story goes down. So we have this really beautiful, I mean, we have over 20 chapters of a story that's like audio narrated and all of these things that's building the universe around us. And we have all of these pockets. Our universe is built in the metaverse. So we have all these pockets of all these different worlds that could be built within the Paradigm Lost, which is what our world is called. So we want to build the rails for people, but we want people to, once we build the rails, go down that, create their own content, and we actually fold that into the main storyline. So if something just totally doesn't make sense and someone writes something that is, written for the 1940s and is totally archaic compared to our world, it doesn't make sense for us to fold that in. But if we give the rails and the parameters of how our world works, which there's a lot of leeway there, and someone is able to create within that, we can fold it in, empower them, and actually lift up what they've written, what they've created, and make it true canon. So I think that is, for us, the route that makes a lot more sense than completely CCO.
I think that is a beautiful breakdown to the different benefits. And I really do think it's a brand by brand decision, with memes obviously being something that truly benefits from CCO. But as you get these more in-depth world building experiences, it's tough to just completely open it up. So next, it sort of ties to how you envision all of this coming together with gaming and interactive experiences involving CyberBrokers or the mechs. How do you see the future of NFT-based projects incorporating both lore or their IP across gaming?
Oh, I'm really excited about it. We've already been doing it for a while ourselves since launch, and I'm seeing it more and more. I mean, we obviously, all of us know here is that, kids, adults, everyone, people spend hundreds or thousands of dollars sometimes on mobile games or PC games or wherever they're playing, and it's within a walled garden. We've seen like black markets pop up for people to go and sell their skins or their weapons, and them actually get banned from the games, right? So there's been this really closed ecosystem so far within gaming, and as everyone on this panel has just been talking about, the excitement of working together to build something that's not like that, allowing people to actually own their assets, be able to trade those assets freely in a 24/7 global marketplace, when they've leveled up their items massively and want to move on from the game, or whatever reason that may be. So I think that is really, really exciting. I think we're going to see increased interoperability. We've already been seeing that with in some small cases, but I know that's such a buzzword, but I think it's going to become a lot bigger once some of this like hype and FOMO and all of those things sort of die down, which is why it's kind of, I mean, I've been through a few bear markets in the NFT space. It's kind of a nice time to see who sticks around and builds, but we're going to see weapons that are interoperable. We're going to see power-ups based on what kind of punk that crypto punk that you brought into the world. If you have 3D glasses, maybe you have some special ability. I think we're going to see things that are unique to this space that haven't happened before, that I'm really excited about. And I also, going back to sort of the UGC, I think I'm really excited to see different projects take that into account. For us specifically, we are already thinking about how powerful user-generated content is and how to provide a platform for that to flourish for the people who are the most active in our community and who are creators. And we're giving them tools with AI, with 3D files, with all of these things that they can continue to build and create. And if we can fold that into our gaming experiences, that's something I'm really excited about. And to tie that all up, all of those things and gaming, I think we're going to see a lot of other technologies that have just been like touched on in the past in smaller ways, besides maybe like Pokemon Go, who did something really massive with AR. But we're going to see these things integrate and be used together. So the power that people are using with AI and even Blockade Labs, we've been seeing them create like full 3D spaces that you can like draw characters into. Those types of power of AI mixed with virtual reality, mixed with augmented reality, all together within a game so that you could experience it in many different ways, will enable players to experience their NFTs and things they own in ways that just haven't happened before. So I think there's going to be a lot of new business models and just like the emergence of different things now within gaming for sure.
And so you speak to a lot of these expansive ideas of how we might be able to broaden IPs and leverage gaming. So with all of these expansive ideas in mind, how do you think that you're able to maintain that sense of community between the NFT holders themselves, and in fact enhance that community?
Yes, that's where we come back to the core vision that we have, and why I mentioned that we have a really permissive commercial license, but don't go all the way to CCO. We have that core vision that we're building on constantly. And like I said, we have, CyberBrokers completely on chain. We just released the pixel broker versions of those characters. We have full 3D files of mechs that just launched. Like, we have this core vision that we are building every single day. And our community is allowed to co-create with us. We have writers' rooms that we pull in writers from our community, and they help edit and write different chapters of our story. We have creator rooms where we actually have people building mini games and other people testing them out. So we've built the rails, we know where the train is headed, and we're inviting everyone to come aboard to take part in that journey and make their own content. So that's where I think we keep that moving forward and keep it sort of like the CyberBroker universe is just building those rails.
Awesome. I love it. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I could talk to all of you for 5 hours, no problem. We're all tackling many of the same problems. It's been an honor being up here, moderating a panel of people that I think are really driving the space forward in really incredible ways.